Greetings and welcome to Geeks First. Today we're at our local game store, or FLGS, and we're going to be discussing a question that was asked at my armory that I just got back from. And that question is, as a new player, where do you begin in the game of Flesh and Blood? Now, that question is nuanced in a lot of ways, and some of that involves where I'm going to begin to talk about our starter deck options, as well as how you can pick a hero and what set you might look at to obtain that hero. So let's begin where it all started with Welcome to Wraith. Now, Welcome to Wraith has 4 heroes that are in Welcome to Wraith. You have Katsu, the Wanderer. You have Dory. You have Bravo. And you have Rhinar. Now, these 4 heroes, while important because they are the pillars of the original or OG heroes in the game, they are Ninja, Brute, Guardian, and Warrior. Those 4 classes exist in your first set, Welcome to Wraith, which means that if you want to pick one of those classes, Welcome to Wraith is a great booster pack to buy in order to get into those classes. Now, that's basically not to say that you shouldn't buy those for other things, such as generic cards, which would appear in most sets, but in this scenario here, if you are chasing a ninja class or trying to do something along those lines, WTR has cards that would be available for you in order to leverage that class. If you are looking for a warrior class hero, the warrior class does appear in WTR. Same with Bravo, who is a guardian, and Rhinar, who is a brute. Now, in that set, changing it up, going to the next set, you have Arcane Rising. Now, Arcane Rising has 4 new heroes, or 4 new classes that have been introduced in the game of Flesh and Blood. You have Azalea, who is a ranger. You have Dash, who's a mechanologist. You have Kano, who's a wizard. And you have Viserai, who is a runeblade. Now, these 4 classes exist in WTR. Not really, just kidding. I was checking to see if you were paying attention. So like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for more content. So when you look at your heroes, now you have 2 different boxes. You have a WTR box, which contains certain heroes and classes, and you have an Arcane Rising box, which contains certain heroes and classes. Now, in Arcane Rising, because there are these 4 various heroes that did not exist in WTR, you need to understand that when purchasing those, you're going to be able to get cards from these packs. However, you will not have cards that are, unless they're generic, be able to work with your heroes from WTR, because the hero class is different in these. Now, if you want to go after, say, a mechanologist or a ranger or a wizard or runeblade, obviously this set would be the set you would go for over WTR, where you can get a brute. So pop quiz, if you were to look for wanting to get a warrior, which set would you pick? Would you pick the WTR or would you pick the Arcane Rising?
A few moments later.
Okay, well, if you were looking for a warrior, the correct answer at this stage would be you would buy WTR, because that is where your warrior cards come. Now, that's not to say you shouldn't buy Arcane Rising, but Arcane Rising only would have generics which can add to your deck. But from a class specific, obviously, they wouldn't be there. Now we go on to Crucible of War. That is the 3rd set. Now, your LGS may or may not actually have copies of these, because the first 3 sets are officially out of print, so that is something to pay attention to. Now, as we progress here, WTR Arcane Rising were core sets. Now, the first set, which is still part of Flesh and Blood 1.0, is called Crucible of War. This was a supplemental set and contained the combined hero classes of the first 8 sets, meaning that in that you could get cards that would be added to your deck for any of the first 8 heroes, and they added some new younger heroes for Blitz format to be able to be added in that deck. So Crucible of War is an excellent choice if you want to buy some cards that would have some class in from those first heroes. Now, that's not the end-all be-all, and obviously it's still like Chase here because this is non-draftable, which means that because you're buying this, you are targeting to buy cards for your hero. Next up on the docket, we have Monarch, everyone's favorite new hype train, because the 10th set is going to be a callback, or technically it's Dusk Till Dawn, which is a callback to the original Monarch. Now, Monarch is one of the last sets that there was first edition and unlimited. This is pre 2.0. Now, in front of us here, we'll have 2 packs. This is the pack arts that came within this. They did not actually showcase the heroes in this. So you have an unlimited with the unlimited stripe at the top, and you have a first edition, which is over here. Now, it's important to know for new players that you don't necessarily need to buy a first edition over unlimited unless you're chasing the cold foils or the higher rarity alternate art cards. The unlimited cards will do just the same as the cards that are in the first edition. However, there is a premium for those folks that want to chase those cards. Now, in this set, in Monarch, you had different classes. You had 4 heroes, if I remember correctly, and we're going to go ahead and pull those heroes out. In Monarch, you had 4 heroes. You had Chain, Bound by Shadow, Prism, Sculptor of Arclight, who has hit Living Legend, and technically Chain has hit Living Legend as well, Sir Bolton, Breaker of Dawn, and Levia, Shadowborn Abomination. So these 4 heroes were the heroes that were available in Monarch. Now, what's interesting about these is they introduced talents. These 4 heroes, which you can see here, which is your Chain, is a Shadow and a Rune Blade. Prism is a Light and Illusionist. Bolton is a Light and Warrior. And Levia is a Shadow Brute. Shown here for you to see. Now, the addition of Monarch meant that there is now talents in the game of Flesh and Blood. Talents are another card pool that your hero has access to. And what's nice about that is that this opens up the ability to have a wider swath of cards. Now, if you remember from the very first couple of sets, this is a Shadow Brute card. So, pop quiz, what set, prior to Monarch, could you buy cards from that would contain Brute cards?
A few moments later.
If you guessed WTR, you are correct. However, secret bonus time, if you also guessed Crucible of War, you were also correct. So give yourself a pat on the back, because both of those sets contained Brute cards, because WTR is the set that the Brute mains in, and Crucible of War is a supplemental set which allows players to get certain cards from those classes, such in this case as Brute. Now, you would not be able to get any Shadow cards, or you would not be able to get any Light cards, because up until this point, they did not exist in a scenario which they were in those classes. So this is the first iteration of them existing. So let's move on and go to the next set that would have came right after that. None other than Tales of Arya. So here we go. Tales of Arya is the next set that we can talk about here. Tales of Arya comes in both first edition and unlimited, as seen here. You have Briar, Lexi, and Oldhim. These 3 heroes are basically heroes I didn't play much of, so I can't give you too much information about it. But those heroes in general are extremely popular. And you'll notate here that these went back to having the heroes as the art on the pack. Similar to Monarch, Tales of Arya added talents as well. So in this case, Lexi is an elemental ranger hero, as you can see here. Oldhim is an elemental guardian hero. And Briar is an elemental Runeblade hero. So what's nice about this is that now this has given elements into the mix, meaning that you can leverage elements to play. Now, the elements on the card, in this case, have specific elements they are used for. So Briar is Earth and Lightning, Oldhim is Essence of Earth and Ice, and Lexi is Ice and Lightning. Now, what's nice about this gives the ability to have classes as well as talents on these cards that are different than Monarch, so you have a little bit more variety to play with. Now, the card pools here obviously are different, and you can reach back into, in this case, Runeblade. Which set? Pop quiz. If you guessed Arcane Rising, you guessed correctly, and if you guessed Crucible of War, yeah, I'll give it to you. There's some Runeblade cards in there as well. So the card pool here has expanded again. Now, if you look at Guardian, again, you can go back and look at what type of cards that you can get. 3, 2. If you guessed WTR, because Guardian came out in WTR, as well as Crucible of War, guess what? You'd be correct as well. Now, you have a Ranger hero here for Lexi. Now, if you would guess which set, 3, 2, 1. Yeah, that's right. Ranger came out in Arcane Rising, which means you'd be able to get cards from Arcane Rising as well as Crucible of War. So those are the sets that you can purchase to be able to get cards to support those classes. Now, obviously, buying singles is a little bit more different and can be a tad complicated. But when you start looking at what is available, that was the last of the core sets, basically pre-2.0. But that's not really true, because in comes Everfest. Everfest is a supplemental set that was basically released in first edition only at this point, and technically Unlimited does exist, but it has not been officially released to the public. So because of that, we are basically saying that Everfest is only first edition. Now, Unlimited may come in a future state where it's needed, but for right now, LSS has said no. Now, the Everfest set includes cards for all classes. Now, what's nice about that is that because prior to this, you had a variety of heroes from a variety of different sections of the game, well, this essentially kind of turned into a catch-all set. Now, that means that you can get talents, you can get cards that are for classes, but it's not really specific. I don't think that you're going to get extreme bits of information, but I will say that if nothing else, it is a good starting point for folks that just want to add to almost any class in the entire game, up until Flesh and Blood 2.0. So hang tight, 1 second. All right, so we have wrapped up the Flesh and Blood pre-2.0, and we're going to go ahead and put all these back in my box. And now we're on to the really fun stuff. All right, so next, right off the bat, after Everfest released a set called Uprising, and Uprising introduced a couple of different heroes into the game. 3 specifically that I'd like to talk about. We don't have Icelander. So I only have 2 here, but there is a third. It is a ice wizard named Icelander. But what I have available to show on camera here is Phi and Dromai. Now, these heroes are interesting because they're a draconic and there's a subclass. So Dromai is an illusionist hero and Phi is a draconic ninja hero. Now, if you remember early on, ninja came out in WTR. So this is an iteration of that and has a different ability plus a new talent, which is now in the Uprising set, which means that this hero has cards that are available from both WTR, technically it would be in Crucible of War, as well as Everfest, and now in Uprising, because that covers all those. When you look at Dromai, you have a Draconic, which is again in the game, or in the set of Uprising, but because it's an illusionist, you now can go and get cards from, say, oh, look at that, Monarch, because that is a set that had those cards, as well as Everfest, because that came after that. Now, I know this sounds slightly confusing, and I apologize for where we are at in this mantra at this point, but I do want to make these very clear that I am probably missing a few things, and I'm doing my best to cover as much of this as possible. But if there is a mistake, please very much comment and correct me in the comment section below. I will gladly pin your comment or try and create a registry of things that I have misspoken in this video. But overall, I'd like this to become a very solid place for us to begin chatting about the different heroes and where to begin, because that is a confusing aspect to players. This whole video literally spawned from, I was just at my armory and 2 new players came up, and one had a Monarch, I think it was a chain deck, and the other had a, I don't know, it was I think an Outsiders Azuri deck. And they were like, what box do I buy? And this LGS did not have any Monarch Unlimited, so it was really hard for me to educate them and say, well, here's this. So I wanted to make a video because this is, I think it's very important to know, especially if you're trying to jump in as a hero or you really love a certain class, you just kind of got to know where you're going to go. Hot off the presses, after you went to Outsiders, Flesh and Blood 2.0 released Dynasty. Now, Dynasty is a fantastic supplemental set similar to Crucible of War and Everfest. What's nice about this set is that this is also, again, supplemental, but it now contains stuff for everything across the entire board, all the way back. So every class, every talent, for the most part, is represented in some fashion in here. Ergo, some of the elemental stuff might not be as much in there. Some of the light and shadow may not be as much in there, but the core class groups do exist within that. So those are actually in this. And Dynasty, again, would be a great example of if you jump on in and you just want to get some cards for your class. It is like a little bit of a lottery system. There are some higher end tier rarity cards, which this video is not about rarities, it's about classes, so I will not talk about marvels in this video. But Dynasty is a solid choice if you want to get some cards for your Clash, because you'll get a little bit of smattering of everything. Next up after that, we technically have History Pack. We're going to come right back to that at the end on purpose. But we have Outsiders. Outsiders is the current latest set. It's the 9th set in Flesh and Blood. And Outsiders has 3 main heroes. Well, technically, actually, it brought back several heroes from the original WTR and Arcane Rising back into the mix. So it's fantastic because you have Riptide, you have Arachne, a different version of Arachne, you have Uzuri, you also have Azalea, you have Katsu, you have Benji, so you have 6 heroes to choose from. And on top of that, LSS did a bang-up job on getting this, which is the Outsiders Blitz pre-constructed decks. So again, you got your Benji right there. You got your Arachne right there. You got your Riptide. Boom, right there. Look at that. You got your Azalea, because we never had this in before. And now you got your Uzuri and you got your Katsu. So look at that. Boom, 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 boom. You can literally pick any of those heroes and just go to the races with it. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic that they have made this because, well, frankly, this is a solid product. Even if you just bought this as a boxed kit, you could literally take this like a board game, sit it on the shelf, and you can play against your friends with that set. Now, I'm going to stop giving that accolades at this point, but that's basically to just tell you that they have really redone and started to try and ramp up the onboarding process because there is a little bit of confusion in how to get in board with the game of Flesh and Blood. So as we look at these packs here, we can have the Uzuri pack, the Arachne pack, and the Riptide pack. Now, you're going to notice that something interesting here is there is 2 variations. You have a Japanese and a Belgium print run because one is a paper pack and one is a plastic pack. Again, they are trying their best to go to the more eco-friendly paper packs, but just as an FYI, there are variations for each of these boxes. Look at my collection video if you want to see more as to why some of these variations from Japanese to Belgium exist. There's very unique things. We won't go into it in this video, but it's really fun, and if you're a very interested person in collecting a little bit of everything, that video is probably going to be for you. Now, as we've covered everything so far, you have seen a variety of heroes, classes, and talents that come from various sets in Flesh and Blood. Now, as LSS has out of printed some of these items, it gets to a point where you might ask, well, if my store can no longer get a hold of these products that are out of print, well, how the heck can I look at buying heroes that I want without going to the secondary market possibly and maybe supporting my LGS? And that is where History Pack comes into play. History Pack is a reprint set. Now, there is currently History Pack 1, and on the horizon, History Pack 2 is coming out. Now, what I have here is History Pack 1. This is English. There are black label versions of this available, which, again, I won't go into in the collection video, but there are different languages in both German, French, Italian, and Spanish, as well as Outsiders, by the way, does have those in other languages, so that's a real cool feather in their cap. Cheers. But basically, History Pack is a collation of not every card from the first 3 sets of WTR, Arcane Rising, and Crucible of War, but it is a myriad of cards that exist, and those combine together to create this larger set that has a subset of cards. Now, they are in white border for the players, because that is basically a way to, let those first sets fall out, but History Pack is, from what I understand, print to demand. So, History Pack also released these cool Blitz decks. Now, there's 6 Blitz decks, and we're going to go over them in order here. You have a Rhinar, which is, again, a WTR hero. You have a Dory, which is a WTR hero. You have a Runeblade. I believe this is, Viscerai? So that is a... Oh, gosh. Oh, man. That's Arcane Rising. I don't know why I missed that. So Viscerai is Arcane Rising. Then you have Barabo, he's a WTR. You got Dash, he's Arcane Rising. And you got Kano, Arcane Rising. So you have a great selection of, again, very similar to what I said with Outsiders. This is a boxed set. You can buy a 6-pack here from your LGS. And they come just like this. You can sit on your shelf. And these are Blitz decks. So each of these 6 heroes also exist in History Pack 1. And now, soon, there will be a History Pack 2, which will encompass the following sets, based on what I understand. History Pack 2 will encompass the Tales of Arya set, the Monarch set, and the Everfest set, meaning that you will have a way, once those are out of print, which technically, I believe, based on the article that came out. They are all out of print, the first editions at least. I think the Unlimiteds are also out of print. I might have to put a note in the thing, so look down there to see what I'm talking about. Anyways, the history packs are a great way to get those, and again, because they're supplemental, they do contain every class, most every talent, and in this scenario, because history pack is just the first 3, they do not contain the talent cards for the later heroes, meaning that if you were to see this on a store and you were playing Oldhim, well, you know, you can't really get a bunch of cards for him out of that. I mean, you can get Guardian cards, technically, but you can't get any of the Elemental, Essence of Earth, or Ice cards in History Pack because that was a later add-on. So that about wraps this video up. I cannot think of too many other things to talk about other than obviously there is another product that I will at least mention here in passing. It is the Dory vs. Rhinar 2-player deck. I really do like this. I know that there has been a little bit of controversy based on the MSRP of $49.99 for this product, but honest to God, frankly, you know, I think it's worth it. As a boxed kit, as a, hi, I'm new, $50, you get a basic playmat, you get the cards, you get some cold foils, and you're able to play. This is a Brute, and that is a Warrior, and those 2 decks go head-to-head, and it's just a blast. So whether you do this, whether you buy a $10 Blitz deck, whether you decide to go and buy singles, support your LGS, however you want to do it. Again, that's why we're here at our LGS. I wanted to have this conversation, not in my studio, but at an LGS. And I'm glad that my LGS is willing to help support me in these efforts. This store specifically actually is going to, on Tuesday of this next week, as this video is out, going to host the very first UPF event here in Indianapolis. And I'm very, well, maybe, I don't know if it's very first, but it is going to be at least the first official Armory level UPF event that I'm helping to try to coordinate and get together. And I am so very excited to see that happen and kick off because frankly, I love UPF. I was so excited in Baltimore to play UPF, and this video is a way for me to help get new players into the game and showcase some of the variety that exists. And hopefully, if you have any further questions, feel free to go ask anybody. There's tons of other content creators. There's tons of good videos that are out there. And if you watch a lot of these videos, you should be able to get some better understanding of how your heroes interact. And at that point, pick a hero and run with it. So again, thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate this. If you want to hit that like, share, and subscribe button, I would greatly appreciate it. This is a new camera and a new setup, so I greatly hope that this thing actually worked like I anticipated, and hopefully this allows me to be a little bit more mobile so that we can do some cool recordings elsewhere. So until next time, may your games be fun and your friendships grow. Cheers. And that is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for sticking around. This is the aftermath of my thing. Yeah, this is great. Like, here, I'll walk around the LGS for a second just to kind of showcase this store off a little bit. I came here on Friday night, so this is Friday Night Magic. The group has left, but this is a store here in Indy, and I think Jerry is over here currently playing. Yep, they're playing some Infinity. This is Infinity, isn't it?
Yes.
So they're playing Infinity currently.
And so that's it.
And then
Your armor is.
there's the rest of the store. So there's your sneak peek at some of the stuff here. And I will end it by showing that he is carrying singles of Flesh and Blood up there. All right. Thanks for tuning in. This is a nice little handy cam. I don't mind this at all. Oh yeah, he even still has some left. I wonder if I should buy a pack and see if I get anything good. Cards in here have gone up pretty good. I mean, there's marbles, or there's technically that's like the first version of some of the marbles with like cool Icelander marble, and obviously the dragons. So coffee time, because yeah. All right. Peace out.